see how it likes an acid bath.
If you're a hardcore DC fan, you probably know Metamorpho from the time the character first debuted back in 1965 in the comic series, The Brave and the Bold. While he's been the mainstay for several storylines over the years, the recent talk around him intensified only after his presence in the upcoming Superman movie trailer. The initial trailer gave us a glimpse of his appearance, and the new trailer was more detailed and allowed us a sight of his magnificent powers. The character is played by Anthony Carrigan in the movie, and I thought this might be a good time to revisit this unique character who's lasted over 5 decades in the DC universe. In this video, I'll take you through the details of the unique physiology and powers of Metamorpho. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. How did a random and common mercenary turn into the mighty Metamorpho? The origin story of Metamorpho is just as interesting as some of the best superheroes and villains in the DC universe. Before transforming into the powerful Metamorpho, he was a soldier for hire named Rex Mason back in ancient Egypt. During the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II, the priest Akhton discovered a fallen meteor, and he crafted the Orb of Ra from this. It was a powerful artifact that became more popular as a deadly weapon in the future. Almost a millennia later, Rex Mason was hired by Simon Stagg to find this Orb of Ra. He did come across the artifact, but his cohort Java stole the artifact and left him in the light of an ancient meteor. This exposure changed Mason permanently, and he turned into Metamorpho, the Element Man. He sought help from the Justice League of America to restore his normal condition, but it failed, and soon Rex Mason also rejected the offer of the Justice League to join their ranks. Now, the exposure to the radioactive meteor left him with a bizarre and inhuman appearance because it rearranged the elements that made up his body, and he also developed a suicidal sense of self-loathing. However, till this point, Rex Mason was completely unaware of the fact that his employer Simon Stagg was actually the one who orchestrated this misfortune on him because he wanted him dead. Simon Stagg was not happy about Mason's relationship with his daughter, Sapphire Stagg, and Java's betrayal was all pre-planned, intended to kill him. Nevertheless, Mason survived even though he suffered a permanent change, and when he returned to Sapphire Stagg, following his disfigurement, he found out that she still had feelings for him. She helped him relearn speech, and he also mastered the art of approximating human form. He discovered that he had now gained the ability to transmute himself into any element found in the human body. Since he was madly in love with Sapphire Stagg, he re-entered her father's service as his bodyguard, Metamorpho, the Element Man. How did Metamorpho turn into a crime fighter? After Rex Mason came to terms with his new powers, he decided to use them for good. He started his career as a superhero, and he was assisted by Sapphire Stagg and her father, Simon Stagg, in the process. He became an active part of various cases as Metamorpho, and while he usually worked as a lone wolf, there were times when he teamed up with other superheroes as well. For instance, when Batman was turned into a monster and his transformation went out of control, Metamorpho was responsible for keeping the Bathawk at bay until the process was discovered to reverse the process. He teamed up with Batman on other occasions as well, and there was even a time when he acquired the abilities of Batman and Superman, which I'll speak about in the next segment. Were there any attempts to reverse the condition of Metamorpho? By now, Metamorpho had spent a few years as a crime fighter, and he was slowly coming to terms with his new form of existence. Suddenly, he was offered the chance to return back to his normal state by Simon Stagg, who claimed to have found a specific scientific procedure that would get the job done. This required Rex to spend years submerged inside a vat of chemicals, and he agreed to go ahead with the plan. However, Simon Stagg was forced to take him out prematurely after his daughter was threatened by a hired killer known as Bounty Hunter. This is when he teamed up with Batman one more time to save his love interest, but Bounty Hunter managed to escape. After some time, he gained the powers and abilities of Batman and Superman, following a freak accident caused by Java. However, these effects soon wore out, and he lost the superpowers. Aside from the time he fought alongside Batman against the Bounty Hunter, he also teamed up with him in Plastic Man to clear Bruce Wayne's name in a case. There was a time when Metamorpho decided to leave the city and relocate on a hidden retreat on the mountains. But after finding out with the help of Batman that he was being used by the local criminals for smuggling gold, he went back to the city life. How was Metamorpho revived after he was killed? I'll discuss Metamorpho's potential immortality later in the video, but there was a time when he was killed and brought back to life. This happened when Rex Mason stopped his solo adventures and became a part of a superhero team called the Outsiders. Meanwhile, a Markovian scientist named Dr. Helga Jace was working on a potential cure that could reverse his condition. She also helped him gain access to his love interest, Sapphire Stagg. But the reunion proved to be a brief one because her father, who never really approved of this relationship, killed Rex using the Orb of Ra. However, Dr. Jace was aware of one thing that could bring him back, and the Outsiders set out to Egypt in search of the meteor of Aktun. They were transported back in time to 1200 BC, and when Metamorpho was again exposed to the ancient meteor, his condition was restored. He even briefly came under the control of Aktun, but the Outsiders managed to stop him. When he finally returned to the 20th century, he discovered that he had been transformed permanently, and while he was sad about this new normal, Sapphire Stagg proposed marriage to Rex, which he gleefully accepted. Also, he won the approval of Simon Stagg after the Outsiders foiled an assassination attempt on him. What are Metamorpho's unique superpowers, and how do they change his physical body? After he was exposed to the energy of the ancient meteorite, Rex Mason was transformed into a metahuman who had the ability to transmute his body in whole or in part into any element. His powers were rooted in his ability to transmute his body into any element or compound on the periodic table, and this made him one of the most versatile characters in the DC universe. There were several applications of his power. For instance, Metamorpho could transform certain parts of his body, or even his entire body, to elements like oxygen, iron, mercury, and some complex compounds like acids and gases, depending on the need of the hour. This made his physical body extremely elastic in nature, and by altering the state and composition of his body, he could stretch, compress, or reshape himself into tools, weapons, and other objects. He also became extremely resistant and durable, and external impact could do precious little damage to his body. His body became so elastic that he could stretch, bounce, elongate, and control his physical shape, just like he was made of rubber or plastic. Metamorpho was also capable of biofission, which meant that he could split his body into several copies, and each of these duplicates would have his own powers. How is Metamorpho's physical body able to function in outer space? After the transformation, Metamorpho no longer required food, water, or air, and this meant that he could survive in the most extreme environments. Even outer space was no longer a problem for him, and his flight abilities also meant that he could sustain himself in space. There have been quite a few comic book story arcs that took him to space, and Metamorpho had no physical issues whatsoever. How physically strong and durable is Metamorpho? Metamorpho possesses remarkable physical strength, and he can go head-to-head against some of the toughest characters in the DC universe. What makes him even more invincible is the fact that he can increase his physical size at will, which also increases his physical strength to a crazy level. As for his durability against attacks, Metamorpho has a physical condition that gives him a natural body armor, which can be resistant to the deadliest attacks that include both blunt attacks and energy attacks. He has sustained some very powerful blows with time and never suffered any lasting damage for the same. What makes his powers so effective during a fight? Metamorpho is not just about changing his existing state, and his powers allow certain changes that come in handy during combat. For instance, as an extension of his power, Rex can produce toxins and compounds from his body. He can also turn his hands into blunt weapons, and he's also capable of producing more complex pieces of equipment like binoculars and turbines, if that is what is required. Also, he possesses enhanced vision that allows him to see in the dark, a power that also comes in handy during his space travels and nighttime fights. He can simply transform his eyes into binoculars, and this allows a greater accuracy in his vision. Aside from his physical power, Metamorpho also possessed vast knowledge of chemistry and martial arts, which were useful in fighting some of his opponents. What are the major weaknesses of Metamorpho? For this segment, I'll keep the psychological weaknesses aside, because it's clear from his entire backstory that he suffered from an identity crisis following the changes that his body experienced. In terms of power, exposure to the energy emitted by the Orb of Ra, carved from the meteor that transformed him, negates his powers and causes his body to lose cohesion. There's also a risk of dark energy bonding, especially after he was exposed to the dark multiverse energy. Can Metamorpho reproduce? He was married to Sapphire Stagg, but things did not get off to a flying start when it came to family planning. They were trying to find a way to conceive a baby, but their hopes were initially dashed. After the physical examination, Rex agreed to go ahead with an experiment that would infuse him with new DNA, and Dr. Jace began the treatment. As luck would have it, she could not complete the treatment procedure, and when the Manhunters activated their sleeper agents on Earth, including Jace, she captured the Outsiders and took control over Metamorpho. Before she could be stopped, she destroyed both Metamorpho and herself, which kept him dormant for some time before he was reconstituted by the Dominator's gene bomb. He worked with the Justice League Europe and suffered from amnesia, which left him with no memory about his family. However, now he had an infant son, which clearly indicated that he could, in fact, reproduce. They did have a son named Joey Mason, and he inherited his father's power of elemental transmutation, even though it came with uncontrollable and harmful ability. He was the biological son of Rex Mason and Sapphire Stagg, and he possessed his father's abilities in a more dangerous form. There was a point when Joey injured Java, the bodyguard of Simon Stagg, and this raised serious concerns about the nature of his power. Also, Sapphire and Joey were once fused into a single energy being after a lab accident, along with Simon Stagg, who was controlling the energy. There were many dangers of this along the way, but the family dynamics always involved attempts at reconciliation and protection, and even Simon Stagg eventually came around and softened his stance towards his grandson. What is Metamorpho's personality like? Is he impacted by his physical condition? Metamorpho has always been a flawed hero, which makes him a compelling character with a good heart. He constantly struggles to balance his personal life with his responsibilities as a superhero, but his transformations can be quite messy and unpredictable, which also takes a toll on his personality. This leads to some awkward situations at times, when he seems somewhat clumsy and unstable. However, even though he has his quirks, Metamorpho is very loyal to his friends and teammates. His relationship with the Outsiders has been quite perfect in this regard, and even his fellow teammates reciprocate his loyalty. Generally speaking, Metamorpho is inherently good, and driven by a strong sense of right and wrong. This becomes quite relevant because he often finds himself in situations where he has to choose between his personal life and the greater good. Also, even though he possesses incredible superpowers, he doesn't always relish being a superhero. His past connection with Stagg Industry and his memory of his fully human life push him into an emotional conflict at times, but nothing that he cannot recover from. Marvelous verdict. DC Cinematic Universe will get better with Metamorpho. If the trailer of Superman is any indication, then the new tantalizing glimpse of Metamorpho is here to stay. His role in the overall story remains a mystery, but what makes his presence so intriguing is the fact that he has such a rich backstory and impressive superpower. The upcoming Superman movie is the first cinematic entry in James Gunn's DCU Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. Gods and Monsters. And the movie has already announced a fierce lineup of memorable DC characters, like Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, Crypto, and Metamorpho. It's not clear if Metamorpho will appear as an ally or an adversary, but if the movie reflects his comic book storyline, then his sense of morality and loyalty will surely make him fight for the greater good. On the other hand, his sinister look in the movie has prompted many to think that he might be a potential threat, and the ambiguity has kept the fans on the edge. All I can say is that either way, it will be great fun to watch Metamorpho in action, and I believe that Anthony Carrigan will do justice to that role. Do let me know in the comments below what you think of Metamorpho and his potential role in the upcoming Superman movie. Also, tell me which aspect of his remarkable anatomy has impressed you the most. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.